My name is Kamal Manocha. I represent PMS AIF World. So today we have amongst us Mr. Vikas Khemani. And I'll just give a brief background to Mr. Vikas Khemani. Mr. Vikas Khemani is a CFA, and brings 23 years of experience. Having worked into equity markets. Out of these 23 years, he has been part of Edelweiss team for 17 years, managing the institutional equities. He's the one who had set up institutional equities. So, we have been doing this series of webinars by name Advice and Series. The broad topic of this webinar series is crystal gazing next decade of wealth creation for investors. While we are crystal gazing decade 2020 to 2030 for our investors with regards to the opportunities as well as challenges which this decade kind of portrays for wealth creation, we are wanting to understand from various money managers what are the various themes around which the wealth can be created. So today, from Vikas, we are going to understand one particular theme which is quite convinced about, and that pertains to manufacturing sector. We have been hearing a lot in terms of economic reforms that have been done over the last more than 3 years to kind of turn around the manufacturing strength in Indian context. And after COVID, a lot of supply chain shift is happening, which is favoring India. All that will be covered, and all this is quite a significant opportunity with regards to creating wealth in next decade. I formally welcome you, Vikas, and over to you. Vikas, you're on mute. You have to unmute.
Hello, am I audible, Kamal?
Yes, you're audible now.
Right. Great. Sure. Thanks, Kamal, for lovely words, and thanks for arranging this. And good afternoon to everyone for joining this webinar. Over next 40-45 minutes, we'll try to give you a sense about the opportunity space Kamal spoke, and we'll be happy to take any questions and answers after that. Kamal, is it possible to put the presentation?
Hold on, I'll just do that. Yeah, just hold on.
So while Kamal is putting the presentation, let me build a little bit of background of the talk today. So I think out of my investing career, one thing I have learned over a period of time, that if you can identify a theme which is developing for a long period of time, and you can kind of go and pick up some stocks, you can really create serious amount of wealth. And we have seen many such trends historically in the past, and those trends, the genesis of those trends typically emerges out of some big crisis. Those crisis brings about some sort of shifts, some tectonic change which happens, and which is kind of drives over next 5-7 years those changes. Now let me give some idea about the previous crisis, and how they brought about those shifts and changes, and what the current crisis means. So let us go back and understand some of the crises we have seen in the past. 1992, the economic liberalization. India was almost bankrupt. We pledged our gold to meet our foreign exchange liability, and we all know that how the massive economic liberalization happened post that. And after that, over next 3-4 years, Indian markets did very well. We almost multiplied by 4 times, and within that, stocks even did much better. Many stocks ended up becoming 10x, 15x in that period, and widespread rally we saw. But that is again probably a little far. But let me go back to the next crisis which we saw, which I saw personally firsthand. Probably the '92 crisis I saw from the college, but the dot-com crisis, when it happened, that I clearly saw firsthand, myself being in the market. And I remember, after the dot-com bubble busted and a lot of market crashed, the cycle of interest rate reduction and easy liquidity started. Alan Greenspan had dropped the interest rate significantly and printed a lot of money, and so happened in India, where the Vajpayee government was there and the interest rates came down sharply, and that led to a big cycle of industry investments and in industrials and capital goods, and that over the next 5-7 years created a significant amount of up move in many of those stocks and sectors. To give you some context, I mean, that is the time I remember I had just joined Edelweiss to build the business, and we had done a thematic report on manufacturing based, where we had identified some of the industrials which could be beneficiary of that trend. And like Thermex was a 400, 500 crore market cap company. Bharat Forge was sub 1,000 crore market cap company. L&T was about 10,000, 11,000 crore market cap company. And all of those companies ended up becoming 10x, 15x, over next 5, 7 years. Now, this is the kind of trend you see when there's a very big shift happens, because investment cycle had begun, investments in industrials, investments in infrastructure had happened, and across the board we saw a good amount of value creation happening. So this is the kind of shift I'm talking about. Fast forward again, you see 2008 crisis happened. Thanks, Kamal. Uh, do I have the control of this, or? Yes, I have. Great, Kamal. Thanks. So if you will see the chart. So the next crisis happened in 2008. These are the two crises I talked about. Next crisis happened in 2008, where there was a huge backlash against the Wall Street, and most governments did something for the Main Street in terms of populist measures. And in India, too, in 2009, Manrega was announced to give money in the hands of people. Also, MSP of the agriculture produce had was raised significantly so that people get money in the hand. And around the same time, commodity prices post crisis dropped significantly. Combination of all these three factors unleashed a significant demand in consumer stocks across the board, especially from the rural economy. And we saw a next 4 or 5 years period of significant growth in the FMCG demand and margin expansion. Same stocks which were used to trade at, in the whole cycle of 2002 to 2008, consumer stocks didn't do well, because that time commodity prices are going up, and hence margins were constantly under threat. But as the 2009 crisis came, the same stocks ended up growing profitability by 20% plus. Re-rating happened, earnings expanded, and most of those stocks ended up becoming 5x, 7x. So this is the kind of shift you are talking about. And these shifts tend to take place very slowly. Very often you are not able to estimate their impact. But if you can do a little bit of homework, a little bit of groundwork, it's not that hard as well. And hence we always try to get our arms around what are the big trends happening. Because if you get your broader theme right, trend right, then even in difficult times you are able to hold on to your conviction. Because markets are always going to have volatile phases. Even if your long-term theme is there, even if our companies are good, you will still have volatility. And you need a strong anchor in the times of volatility, and that anchor can only come from your conviction in the overall opportunity space and conviction in the company you are invested in. So right now we are going to talk about the conviction in the opportunity space. Companies we'll talk about later. So first, if you have that conviction, then you will not be worried about that if let's say some small development happens, you would rather see that as an opportunity than a threat. So that's our approach out here. Now, so what is this crisis bringing? What is the big shift this crisis is bringing? One of the big shift this crisis is bringing, which and the result of that we think is India will see a manufacturing boom over next decade, primarily led by three factors: import substitution, export opportunity, and market consolidation, becoming bigger within the Indian manufacturing space. And combination of these three, I will talk each of them in detail, but combination of all these three things will create a big opportunity. So today, India GDP in manufacturing is about $450 billion, which is about 15% of the total size. Government's estimates or government projects by 2025 it to reach 25%, which is $1.25 trillion. But even if you give some discount, let's say governments assume it's optimist, even if you take 20%, we are talking about $1 trillion plus opportunity. And in 5 years, doubling GDP is by no means a small thing. It's a very, very big, target. And we think this doubling of GDP in manufacturing will create huge amount of opportunity across many sectors. Now, what are these reasons why this? Why do we believe that this will happen? There are broadly 5 reasons why India is a sweet spot to capture this opportunity presented by, or I would say rather accelerated by COVID crisis. There are broadly 5 reasons. One is huge amount of government's reform, cost competitiveness, change environment, as in the China plus one strategy, strong domestic market, and proven entrepreneurship. Now, if you see, first time in the history of independent India, a prime minister from the on 15th August, his Independence Day speech started with reduction in. I mean, his start was that urgent need to reduce dependence on import. I mean, that's the kind of, we have seen prime minister speaking about the poverty and unemployment and a lot of other things. But this is the kind of focus government has right now in terms of reducing our dependence on the imports, because it is not only economic issue; it's a very big even geopolitical issue. And there's a huge amount of focus on the government. So government has done series of impact issues, and we will again talk what all they have done to kind of accelerate manufacturing in India. So that is a very big move which has happened by post-COVID crisis. It has gained a significant amount of urgency and momentum. Second thing is cost competitiveness. India's cost competitiveness is vis-a-vis China and other countries, and India is actually getting better and is already better in many segments. And I will again talk about that. Thirdly, there's everywhere there's a segment talk about in global MNCs that China plus one strategy, that there's urgent need to identify new source of a supply chain, because if something were to go wrong with one source, your business can come to complete standstill. And that's a global talk. This is a trend which is again accentuated by the COVID crisis. So out of all these five, government reform and change environment are the new ones which has become the new catalyst for this growth. Cost competitiveness has not got done anything with the COVID. It was already in the in works, and it was in the place, and I will talk more details. But so these two factors of government reforms and China plus one strategy has actually created a new momentum for the manufacturing. And India has already strong domestic demand. So anybody, any company, any global company can look to India with the fact that you can address the domestic demand as well as make it base for the export of their product elsewhere, and thereby creating economies of scale. No other economy offers this kind of domestic demand opportunity as India does. And we think that we already seen many such incidences coming. Apple is coming and setting up the factory for in India for not only India but also exporting elsewhere. Samsung has done a great job. So all those things you will see more and more accelerating going forward. And lastly, it's proven entrepreneurship. India has we have time and again proven that once the opportunity comes, Indian entrepreneurs are no less than anybody else in the world. It is just that we need to have a little bit conducive environment, a little bit of tailwind, and once that happens, Indian entrepreneurs do a great job. And these are the five factors we think will accelerate this whole growth of manufacturing. Now let's talk about the two factors which are very, very important. That what government has done, in last couple of years, and more specifically in last 3 months or 4 months of post-COVID crisis. So last couple of years, government has already been doing a lot of reforms which are making India efficient, like GST implementation happened. Now you have one nation, one tax, and which is after initial hiccup, it has all settled down. We have DFCC which is getting implemented, which will bring down the logistics cost by 37%. Already India is at par with China, but it will further improve our competitiveness. First time India has allowed FDI in 100% contract manufacturing. India has allowed 74% in defense manufacturing. Recently, we saw India also put embargo on 100 plus items that India won't import. It's a very big thing for any government to come and publicly announce that they won't import anymore by a particular timeline. So hence the entire defense forces will have to gear up to their system, and entrepreneurs have to gear up to kind of cater to that demand. And this is a very big thing for a country to announce. We have announced reforms in mining sector. We have announced reforms in power sector. There are many. I mean, I can go on, and all of them, if you connect the dots, they are all in the direction of putting the manufacturing in the even production linked scheme. By the way, incentives in many sectors are very, very interesting. India, by the way, already become exporter of the mobile phones, not in terms of value but in terms of volume, and this is only going to accelerate in times to come. It will only kind of get bigger and better. Many governments like UP has announced defense corridor, where in fact today only there was a news item that they have, they have announced defense corridor where they are inviting companies to come and set up. They already acquired lands and allocating lands. They have announced industrial parks for toy manufacturing. So all those things, right now are happening at a very accelerated pace. Also, many governments have said that if you set up a plant in next 3 years, many labor laws will not be applicable. Now, when you see all those things, connect the dots, you find that there is a bigger picture which is emerging. It is not that they are in isolation. There's a game plan. Some states might not be doing it, but you don't need all states to respond to it. Even if 4 or 5 states respond, I think which is very good, at least good enough for beginning that. And we are seeing states like Gujarat, MP, UP, are kind of well positioning in this ahead of the curve. So we see that this is a very big sort of change which is happening. And very important thing is this: you must understand, to give protection to Indian industry, there's something called tariff reform and tariff barriers and non-tariff barriers. India has historically used tariff barriers. Tariff barriers meaning you put import duty on anything which comes into the country. That is one part. So if you see, India's average tariff is 17%, whereas as compared to China 10%, so South Korea 14%, Japan 4%, right? So, but India never used non-tariff barriers. And what do I mean by non-tariff barriers? Basically, you put, instead of only monetary penalties, you put down some requirements if you have to sell into India. So, like, you can say that if you have to sell into India, your product or your company needs to be registered with so and so authorities. Okay, and that kind of opportunity or that kind of what do you call restrictions, government always has ability to kind of slow down. So China has 2,500 such measures, what they call notification and sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So to give an example, let's say if we have to sell into China, they will say that you need to get this, or let's say somebody has to sell into India, they say you need to get this BI certification. You need to get approval from your product needs to be approved from this particular ministry. Now, every government can always make it harder or slower depending on their need, right? What they want. So India never historically used. So anybody could come and dump and sell anything into India, and India was very meekly addressing into WTO. If you say China has used this very smartly over the last 30 years, it is very hard to sell into China, but it is very easy to buy from China. And they, by the way, use this very strategically over the last 30 years, and that is the reason China is what China is today. Indian government has officially said that we will use non-tariff barriers aggressively now. Like they recently said that no global tenders for orders below 200 crores. Now suddenly this gives huge amount of competitive advantage to the companies who've been bidding or participating in the tenders. In this no competition, right? So only local competition will be there. Right? No automatic FDI for countries sharing borders. This is what a kind of you just can't come and invest into. Anybody else can do, but certain strategic. So this is kind of way of making it harder. That you have to come for approval, and if you have to come for approval, then you may not give the approval, or you will not say no. But governments have all ways of making it slow. They're like how China has been doing for all other countries. I remember when I was in Edelweiss, I was trying to set up a office in Hong Kong, and it's a very funny example. So to set up a broking office in Hong Kong, you need to get their SEBI equivalent regulators permission, and to get the permission, you have to they have put a rule saying that you have to get the CV of the CEO of that company approved. Now think about it, practically speaking. If I am hiring somebody, the first I have to hire, but he cannot work till the time that SEBI or SFC approves the CV. So I am actually, and they take 3 months to come back on a CV. So I have hired somebody. They rejected 2 candidates, which we we felt that they are completely capable, but they rejected 2 CVs. It took me 18 months, and after 18 months, we gave up. I don't want to set up an office. Now this is the kind of a subtle, direct, difficult way of making it harder. Now, this kind of things, nobody can say anything in WTO. Like this, they have put a lot of restrictions. So India will use these restrictions, non-tariff barriers going forward. Like we know that all the power equipments recently, last 10-15 years, we were importing from China. It has now kind of got restricted. They have said, and recently Power Minister also said that in his interview, saying that if capital goods for power generation is very strategic matter, they have to come and get their products approved. Who knows if they have some sitting, malware sitting in their software, and tomorrow they can bring down our system. So we have to go through the huge approval process. Now that itself is a 3-4 year process. By then your local manufacturers will get benefit. So these are the kind of changes government is making to make sure that Indian manufacturers get advantage. And once the ecosystem builds, then I think we are very good at it. We can always capture opportunity in our way. And second point is that cost competitiveness. It's a very important thing. Like everything else can go away, but nothing can beat the cost competitiveness, right? People will buy from you as long as you are cost competitive, right? Now let's look at on labor cost front. India is already competitive. China labor cost is about $800. In India, our labor cost is $200, roughly about 15,000 rupees cost of labor. Even if I adjust for the productivity, Chinese laborers are more efficient from productivity standpoint. Even if I adjust for that, we are almost 40% more cost efficient than Chinese counterparts. And that's a very big advantage. And this, by the way, trend has been developing since 2012. It's not today's trend, by the way. China started increasing their minimum wages from 2012 because they wanted to boost consumption in their economy. And this trend has led to increase of cost of labor there, and there India tends to benefit. And I can tell you many companies have confirmed this, that labor cost in India is far cheaper, and that they are getting advantage of that. Secondly, the power cost in China is same as India. Our cost is 8 cents a kilowatt, and same thing China is 8 cents a unit. Same thing in Vietnam, 8 cents a unit. So, and more importantly, our costs are looking to come down as we implement our reforms, as we reduce the T&D losses, as we do power direct subsidy transfer. We will see power cost coming down, whereas in China's case it is not coming down. So we will only get better from here. Right now we are not worse off, but we are getting better, and that's the important part. Thirdly, logistics cost. China, on the transportation cost is expensive, so they have 155 rupees per kilometer per ton, whereas India is about 50 rupees per kilometer per ton. But because of our infrastructure, the overall logistics cost ends up becoming more or less same as China. But with the DFCC implementation, while right now we are same, with DFCC implementation, we will get even better, and that is starting next year. So today you are not worse off, but you will only get better from here. So India's cost competitiveness has been getting better, and I can tell you many examples by speaking to the company. That they are saying that how it is. A friend of mine, he runs a helmet company, and he was telling me that in helmet, labor cost is a very large component, and he was saying that our manufacturing cost is far lower than China. In fact, in last 3 months, he has first time shipped his helmets to China. He exported to China, which is a very and he's been seeing incrementally it is going back to a lot of other countries as well. And I'll talk about it a little later. But the point I was trying to say that the cost competitiveness is not all that bad. Of course, certain aspects like in some raw materials we are on some commodities we are still not as competitive, so we might have to import commodities from China. But almost about 80% items India is, if not worse, equally cost competitive. This strategy we spoke that there's no doubt that there's a huge amount of dependence on the China, and world over, companies are looking to diversify away from China. China accounts for 28% of global manufacturing. They are dominant player in solar, chemicals, footwear, capital goods, textiles, electronics, in many segments, auto components, right? And every company in the world right now having this world level focus. I was talking to a McKinsey partner. He was saying one of the biggest projects across the globe we are running is advising companies how to diversify away their supply chain, which are the countries to go to, and this is not a 1 year trend. They are saying people are thinking from 5 year, 10 year perspective, and they are advising their companies in their clients in terms of how they should approach this whole diversification of supply chain structurally. So he said, because this is a 10-year trend, it is not a short-term trend, and this is not going to happen. It is probably right now people are in an evaluation stage. Nothing has got implemented. When the implementation happens, you will see a lot of things accelerating. This is just an early trend of what you are seeing, and so this is what is giving us a comfort that even if tomorrow, let's say, everything else can change, this is not going to change overnight. This is here to stay. Even if corona goes away, we settles down, even if the governments in the US change, anything can happen. This is not going to stay, because this is the real risk which has been realized by every company across the globe, and hence they will be forced to look at diversifying away, and India will be very big beneficiary of that. I will speak about that why. So these are the now. So these are the broader reasons why I think you will see this is happening. Now, coming to the import substitution. So as we know that India imports almost $70 billion from China, and we are hugely, current account deficit country. And the primary reason for that is India never looked at this very seriously. We never invested in creating the infrastructure, never invested in promoting this over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I think this has now become a glaringly big risk. It is staring at us. And now, we will see, not only there are sectors like pharmaceutical. India is a very big leader in pharma, but we import most of our raw material like APIs and chemicals from them. Now tomorrow, just think about it. If China stops for some reason, or discourages or makes it expensive to supply that, the entire India's pharmaceutical industry can come down. Now that is a very big, it's a health crisis. There's a very big strategic risk to it. So incrementally, government and companies are not only looking at it as a cost factor, they are also looking at as a risk diversification item. And I'll tell you some of the trends which, if I were to talk about, I was talking to a friend of mine. He's been running a consumer company. He said, for the last 5-7 years, we've been nicely importing our material from China without much problem. We were buying, we were adding to our cost, and we were selling. He said, because of COVID crisis, we said, let us evaluate what we can do. And he said, we looked at manufacturing in India, and they found out that manufacturing in India will be cheaper, and their payback of the plant will be about 4 to 5 years. And they have announced just a 50 crore capex on that. So this is the interesting part, right? Companies who even had capability, they have never explored that. Can we import? Can we sort of start manufacturing in store? Because the ecosystem was there. It was easy to come from China, so companies would just go and start importing from there rather than looking at that. Who will go through that hassle? Now, it is almost imperative that you have to, even if it is a hassle, you have to go through that, because it's from a risk perspective. Secondly, even cost competitiveness wise, it is better. So when I feel that these two things are there, every entrepreneur will take any amount of hassle to put up that. I don't have any doubt on that. That if I tell that there's a risk to a business, and secondly, if you start manufacturing in India, it'll be cheaper. Even if not cheaper, even if the same cost, they will do that. And I think that is a very big change that has happened. So we have seen already trends for import substitution coming into play. Some of the examples I gave, we are seeing opportunities coming up in furniture space, air conditioner space. I IPO'd a company called Amber Enterprise when I was in Edelweiss, and they are the country's largest air conditioner manufacturing company. So by the way, despite all these years, they were manufacturing ACs for all the brands in India. Now he was saying that this is such a big. He said, I waited for this moment for 20 years. He said, now so much opportunity is coming, not only for import substitution, but like I'm even having export opportunity. Now this company's market cap is about $700-800 million. Not even actually that, it's less. It's about $500 million. Okay. The equivalent company in China called Gree has a $10 billion market. I mean, this is the kind of disparity you're talking about. So if let's say this change happens, he will, and he's already growing. He's putting up new plants, new capacities. Now, when you talk to companies, you realize that this is here to stay. This is happening on the ground. This is really moving right now. A defense company I was talking to, and they said that again. He said, if I get in next 5 years, if I get even a couple of percentage of what overall offset clause is, I will be 5x in my size. So companies have been readying themselves for a lot of opportunities, and those opportunities have just arrived. So companies who are ready, already catering to the current market, and this opportunity will kind of create an acceleration for them. Same way, I think for export, India has already been doing some amount of exports in sectors like machinery, auto component, two wheelers. But now you know this is going to go beyond these sectors only, many more sectors. And in these sectors also, India can become very large. Like chemicals, historically India has had decent capability. Now the growth which has happened, the amount, China has 28% share in the almost close to I think, sorry, no, I just get them 40% share into chemicals, 35% share in the chemicals of the global market. Now think about it, a couple of percentage of the shift, between 3 to 4% also, it's a huge opportunity for India. I mean, if that shift happens, India's company will become 10x. I mean, that's the kind of size we are talking about. So this shift, is here to stay. This shift is happening in many sectors. Every company is looking to say, can I put up a capacity myself, or can I partner with somebody? Classic example, there's a chemical company where a Japanese MNC came and talked to them and said that we will give you technology, we will give you order, we will give you even money, or please just give us manufacture and give us. That's the kind of trend I'm talking about. And that company is nicely going to make decent 25-30% ROE in their this investment. Now these are the kind of, because the reason is that every company needs to diversify away from that, and this is very big trend. Another trend is market share consolidation. As we know that this was already underway, becoming bigger. This has got accentuated by banking credit is not available to smaller players. Cost of compliance, cost of technology, everything has gone up in the recent past, also including because of COVID. And only large companies will be able to survive and cater to this. And hence we see that big will become bigger, and organized player will get more benefit of this. So you will be able to get benefit of technology and scale, and we are already seeing this trend at play. So how India will be able to convert this into a mega trend, right? So the point we are making is not that India is not going to be able, across the board, across all sectors, India is not going to capture that. It's not possible, right? But there are certain sectors which has some capabilities which will be able to capture to this. What are those capabilities? Wherever India has a skill advantage, where India has a cost advantage, where India has already a very big domestic demand market, and where India has a government support or regulatory support. Wherever you see 2 or 3 or some of the factors coming together, those sectors and segments will do superbly well over next 4 or 5 years. And there are many sectors in each of these categories. Because if you already have this advantage, you are beginning to, by the way, get orders in this space. And there are many examples I can give you where our auto engineering capability is very huge. Most auto component companies are telling us that the amount of inquiries they have got in recent past is not funny. It's very large. He said if you convert some amount of those inquiries into business, it's going to be big business, right? Cost advantages, we are already cost advantage in many sectors. Now wherever we are not there, we will not get it. There's no doubt on that. But if we are already better off than any other country, we will get that. If you have to cater to domestic phone market, Apple has to set up capacity here, even if you're not even if you're a little expensive, because now Indian government has said that you need to serve India market from here. So any large market player has to come and set up here. And I'll give a classic example. Think about it. Many people tell me that when we talk about the component mobile manufacturing, it is only assembling, it is not real manufacturing. But think about it. This always happens. Maruti, when it came in the early 80s, it was only an assembling plant. 99.5% of the parts were imported. Over the next 20 years, even in a closed environment that time, 99% of the plants parts were manufactured locally. So you start with a particular thing, and over a period of time, you start building components. In electronics, already we have started building components. So ecosystem builds in, and once the ecosystem builds in, it cannot go away. And that ecosystem we needed to build. Some point in time we had to start. Now this has started, and so we believe that this trend is going to capture huge amount of opportunity, and this, all these things are a not a short-term plan. Apple is not setting up the plant. It's like, just think about Maruti, what it has done in last 40 years. Can that happen to electronics industries? Can that happen to TV manufacturing? Can that happen to AC manufacturing? Can that happen to, I mean, I can go, can that happen to a footwear? Can that happen to a toys manufacturing company? Can that happen to, computer manufacturing? It can happen, because we have no shortage of talent. We do have no shortage of any such. So all those things are possible. And again, the point I was saying, that trends develop slowly over a period of time, but when it develops, it stays. And we have two great shining examples in India. One is IT services industry, and other is the pharma. I mean, pharma industry has built $20 billion industry in the same country with the same hassle, same environment, because we have superior chemistry skills. Indians went out, and today not only that, we reverse engineered and then started doing generic manufacturing. But now we are even doing a lot of NC and innovative research. What Biocon has done is, by the way, going and creating competency in biosimilars is not a small thing. So we have built industry by industry. IT today, very often people, what started as a body shopping as an industry, today they are doing transformational work. I can tell you, across the board. Companies like TCS, 1,50,000 crore revenue of a company, single company, has got built here. And today they are not doing only body shopping. They are bringing changes in the company's digital journey across the globe. And this is here to stay. But initially it was seen only limited body shopping. Some companies scaled up, transformed. Same thing will happen in manufacturing also. Some companies will not scale up, some companies will scale up. All those things will happen here. So idea is to first look at the trend and then identify the companies. So which are the sectors which will benefit? Very obvious question. Chemicals and APIs, where you have all things in place: import substitution, export opportunity, and market consolidation. Capital goods, India has a very deep capability of engineering. We just didn't have the supporting environment. Today, we are already beginning to see. One capital goods company told me that they were looking to get access into a global supplier, a global client for last 5 years, and their products won't just get approved. They were going slow. They agreed that our products are good, we are cost-wise competitive, but it's just a sheer inertia to get empanelments. The process was going slow. In last 3 months, they came samne se and said, let us start the process. The empanelment was done, and now the businesses, and they are talking about what business, how product development has to be done, and all this. This is what COVID has done. Earlier things were going slow. Now COVID has brought fast forwarded those things, and this company, which was otherwise growing slowly, will fast forward their growth. So certain things are triggered by the capability already existed. Triggered by COVID has given them an opportunity to grow faster. Same thing is happening in consumer electronics, where we are importing pretty much everything what we want. And now industry by industry, you are seeing things getting set up. Auto Inc. India was always strong, but we feel that India will capture market share from China on that front as well. Defense, we spoke that how new ecosystem will build. Government is very, very keen to build. Today, India does not even manufacture a gun, which is the lowest in the value chain, by the way. There's nothing great about manufacturing a gun, by the way. India has a much bigger we can send our satellites to space, and who will believe that we can't even manufacture a gun? But point is that we never had the ecosystem. Our entire is like this: you were importing from the whole network was set, system was set, nobody bothered. Now we are beginning to put up capacities for that. So all those things will happen across the board. It will happen, and many more sectors will develop, by the way. So I'm not saying that this is the only sector. It is very interesting to see that we can't even think of many sectors. Many times you find that this sector cannot export, and then when you go and study, you will find that, oh, it's already happening. Like the classic example I give, the company called Astral Poly. They said there on the con-call, so it's a public knowledge. I'm not saying any private thing. Pipe is a very bulky business. Okay, typically in that business there's hardly any export. This company has been doing no export. They said we just got one order of 12 crores from a client, again incoming order, and they've just catered and say everything goes well. The it's possibly they will give us a 200 crore order. Now the point is that company said we never thought export as a market in our any of our strategic planning. We were only thinking India as a market. No, so suddenly this has come on our drawing board. Today we might even think of putting up some plant near port so that we can be export competitive. Now this is what COVID has done. There's another company in the consumer space. China used to be big player in that, especially US's 85% of the requirement will come from China, and in China, US impose some import duty on that. Indian company has got the order. Indian company has got a lot of inquiries. They said if we capture even a few percentage of that, it will be a huge opportunity for us. Now you will not think in that bulky consumer durable space that India can export, but that is happening. So even many of the things we will not know today as we speak that this also can be exported away. So we will all see in times to come, and that is our so many more sectors will build, but this is a great opportunity to stay. Now some of the very myths we get or very concerned, so some of the, so we thought let us address some of them. I very often hear that ease of doing is in business is not as good as on ground as on paper. True, we have some of the challenges. There's no doubt on that. Our bureaucratic setup is still very, very challenging. There are lots of things which we could do to make it better. But fact of the matter is that India will still capture this. We have learned to manage that, and that's the reason. A lot of entrepreneurs are already putting up a lot of capacity. They are investing because, as I said, that once there is a business, Indian entrepreneur will manage everything to get that done. Now, do you want it to be easier or not? Answer is yes. But I cannot wait for that to happen. I have to see. It's like this last 7-8 years, chemicals in this industry, in this environment only has done well, right? If I took a view of ease of doing business, then these companies will become 10x in size. I would have missed that opportunity. So there's no point looking at only negative side of the aspect. We have to believe that Indian entrepreneurs are very smart to do everything what is possible as long as there is an opportunity to tap. Secondly, the very often the question is what if the government changes? See, this is not only about government. Suppose let's say government changes. There are two factors which will not change. China plus one strategy will not change. Right? This anti-China sentiment is here to stay, and risk diversification is here to stay. Secondly, the cost competitive is not changing. This is a trend for the last 5-7 years. So what happens is once an ecosystem opens up, then it does not go away. So like this company which I was talking about, they were trying to get access into that company for last 5 years. They did not get it. But once they get access into it, then they will only expand. It's not that suddenly once, because they are no less in terms of capability and cost competitiveness. So once you get an entry, it can't be given away. So this is what, so it's not about one government versus other government. Thirdly, Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh are far more proactive, is very often I hear. Answer is yes, they have got that. But the point is, these countries can cater to sectors and segments which are more labor intensive, right? Even if they capture, India will still have a lot more to capture. It's not that they are going to capture 100% of it, right? Of course, they have been far more proactive, partly also because of their proximity to China, but partly also they have been proactive. But in India, wherever there is a skill-based opportunity, skill-based requirement, people will have to come to India. Like there's a very large MNC. They are saying they are coming up with a global technology hub in India, and say they will make India as they're only not only an R&D base but export hub. So they will cater to 150 countries from India, and the export target is about 50% of the current sales. They have put it down. Now those kind of trends you are seeing. Then I hear very often that banking system is not geared up for credit supply. Answer is yes, but A, banking sector is changing. B, cost of availability of equity capital has become very, very easy now. I think private equity are ready to put money into manufacturing opportunities because they are seeing this as a big one. Also, by the way, private equities have been doing buyouts, majority buyouts in the manufacturing space. I've been in this industry for long. I can tell you the amount of interest which is there of a private equity fund in a buyout of a manufacturing setup, I have never seen in last 20 years, 25 years, because they see is a very, very big opportunity. I mean, recently, one P fund bought 51% stake in Blackstone, in SL Propack. Now, that is very unlike of any large private equity fund, right? In a hardcore manufacturing of packaging, right? Like this happens. This is the early trend. Other thing which we get is China is going to fight back. They are not taking land. Answer is yes. China is going to fight back, but again, they are a very large part of the global GDP, global manufacturing system. This diversification is happening. We are not saying China will kind of die away. China will remain, but even if a couple of percentage of shift away from China is a very big opportunity for us. The shift away from China, we are talking only shift. We are not saying China going down. We are not saying China will stop. So we are looking for shift of 2%, 3%, 5%. This kind of small shift itself is a very big change for India. And that is what we are talking about. Some of the risks, usual risks will be there. What if the global meltdown happens? World stands against China softens, geopolitical risk, banking system crisis. All of those risks are there. The only belief I have is that even if those risks are there, they are, low probability. They can always happen. Any risk can always happen. But this is a trend which is here to stay. Now, what is the investment framework we have in this? What are the kind of companies we will look for? So here, what will you look for? You will look for companies which already have some niche capability or competence. They have proven themselves. They are already doing something or other. So, like let us say, they are doing component manufacturing, like they are doing already manufacturing of chemicals. They will add to many more lines of chemicals. They will add to many more product lines. So they have already proven they are existing. They are doing. They already have registration with the companies globally. So when you have registration, it's a lot more easier to grow your business. Thirdly, they already have some amount of investment already done. See, the capital work in progress is there. Some capacities are ready. Right? Those kind of companies will do very, very well. They will basically able to capture this pretty fast. Fourthly, companies which have strong balance sheet. Because without having a strong balance sheet, you will not be able to capture this. So we believe that companies with strong balance sheet will be able to capture this particular, because they will be able to invest a lot. Capital availability will not be a challenge for them. So we will look for companies, excuse me, with the huge, balance sheet strength. And lastly, most importantly, that companies have to have governance. We will not look at company without any strong governance framework, because without governance, you can even if you got the sectoral call right, trend call right, you can get it wrong. You may not make money. So we've always believed that when there's a tailwind, you have to go and sit on a good ship. As long as the ship is good and strong, it will take you far. But if you sit on a wrong ship, then even if your tailwind is right, either you will sink or you will not go far. So it's important to identify the right ship when you are looking for a big tailwind to take you far. So whenever there's a combination of all these 3, 4, 5 factors, we will look to invest into those companies under this scheme. And there are many companies like this which cuts across many sectors which I spoke about. They are already in their own right, have capability, have client relationship, have there's a company in auto component space. They have existing relationship with Mercedes, BMW, all auto component manufacturers. Now all it takes is that add one more product line, add one more capacity, and ship more products, so the growth can accelerate. So we are looking to identify those companies in this, and these companies have to have a good ROE profile. So we will look for good return ratios. We will not invest without having decent 20% plus return ratios in any of this business, and maybe have many who are kind of in this category. Usual investment process, do the detailed work. We have built a lot of screeners to identify ideas. We have built we read a lot of news items. We talk to a lot of companies. We talk to a lot of sectoral experts in terms of understanding the trends and identify those sort of trends. Deep dive into opportunity. And another thing which we will definitely do is a forensic analysis. Very deep capability we have in our firm in form of doing forensic analysis of companies before we invest, and those We have historically identified companies which because of their balance sheet trouble have gone into difficult phases. My partner Manoj has done this for 12 years, and his work is very well regarded, and he's been well followed by the investing community. So we always kind of do before doing a forensic check whether the balance sheet is for real or not. These are some of his published work where historically has identified many companies which have gone bust or have gone down significantly from the times he has written report. So we will use that forensic framework. We do not want to invest into any company which can, we don't mind having not having investment in anything, but we don't want to have any bad investment. That we are very clear. We can go wrong on our hypothesis about the industry cycle. We can go wrong on those things, but we cannot go wrong on our selection of the promoter. We cannot go wrong on the governance profile. That we are very clear. We will not do anything where we can go wrong on the that is unpardonable in our scheme of things. So this product we're talking about, it's a PMS product. Though it is multi-cap, but predominance 70-80% would be more mid-cap and small caps, and there will be some large caps for sure, but predominance will, because these companies are pretty early, small, and many of these companies can become 5-7x over a period of time, potentially. So, but that's the nature of the fund. So it's a fundamental, bottom-up investing. With our portfolio will be about 18-20 stocks, more likely to be closer to 15, but we are saying max it will be 18-20 stocks. We are putting our own money also behind this. That speaks about the conviction of the fund. And we have all kind of fee structure, fixed, semi-variable, variable. So happy to get paid on anything. We have no problem. We actually like to get paid more only when we deliver. So fully variable, will not charge any fees for 3 years till the time we make money. So I mean that's our most favorite fee structure. But we are happy to get paid as client prefer. So this is the broadly summary of the product which I talked about, and very happy to take questions and address any of the concerns. I'm happy to hear suggestions, comments. Kamal, over to you.
Right. Thank you, Vikas. So, you can see on your right hand side in the chat box, there have been many questions, many long questions, and many, quite a number of questions. You can also read for yourself. But I'll just, raise out the first and foremost question. So, we know that import substitution is kind of socialistic stance, and India's economy over last 2 decades or 2.5, 3 decades have actually come off from being socialistic economic system to a capitalistic economic system. Now, when you state that Mr. Modi has spoken about things like import substitution on 15th August, kind of a day, how do in the overall context, how would overall stock market or economy take it? Because it comes out as a socialistic stance and not a capitalistic stance.
Kamal, it's a very, very, very smart and intelligent question. There's no question on that. The thing is that one has to understand that, there's no right answer to that, but one has to understand what is the fair competition and what is the, unfair competition. Now, let's say a country like historically China strategically decided at a governmental level, given their nature of their governance and the company's political structure, they decided that they want to capture this particular share of the global pie. They abuse WTO. They abuse every. I mean, they on the IPR front they compromise. We all know that how they are compromised. So using those all unfair trade practices, they captured India's market. Now it was our bad that we did not protect them at all. I mean, protect our industry. And I'll give you a classic example. Today we are talking about APIs. There's an urgent need of building API in India, and fermentation based API is a very, very complex thing to make. So we had a company in India which used to make penicillin G, which is a fermentation based API. We used to cater, and it takes a lot of, by the way, capability to build that. I can tell you from 2001-2 onwards, that company started losing money. And how? Because China decided strategically that they want to kill that industry in India. and they got undue support and advantage from the government, their government, to manufacture it cheaper, and they got a lot of subsidies and stuff like that. We all know that, and so because of that, the company in India was forced to shut down by 2008-9. Now, capability which you had, because the government decided strategically that I want to go and capture that market using unfair trade practices, for shutdown here. Today, we are struggling to restart that back. And by the way, it is not only about the cost advantage; it is about also a strategic thing. That today, if we are so dependent on China on that our pharma industry can come down, right? Secondly, the example which I gave you of Maruti, right? Maruti started, so in India, what happened was that we did not build that ecosystem. Now, to build that initial ecosystem, you need support. You need some sort of conducive environment for entrepreneurs to take risk and to put that tomorrow that were to happen again, they will not be killed. Today, why in last 10 years or 15 years, Indian entrepreneurs did not put investment into manufacturing? Because they believed that they may not get protection from the government, and somebody will come from outside and kill the industry, right? For completely reasons beyond capability, right? I mean, we have seen how people, people, and there could be different reasons. Now, at a country level, India is a large country. We have to make certain decisions that this is important for us. Right? Today, we are struggling with, we had a lot of power equipment. First thing is that you bring competition in India. See, if India was not competitive and India was only one or two companies, then I would have agreed. But India today is far more open. Anybody can enter any segment. There will be local competition within the players, and they will compete with each other. And only protection you seek is from an undue, unfair competition which is coming from outside. I feel this is fair enough. And even if for some reason, let us say, timing, let us understand that it's not fair. Let's say, I mean, I don't want to argue with that. Somebody saying it's not fair. Does not matter. Your and my job is to notice a trend and make money from that trend. If let us say China today, India's government is deciding that we will protect it, import substitution. Assume that it's unfair. Indian government is unreasonable. It's not capitalist stand, socialist stand. Will there be money to be made in this over next 10 years? That's the question to be answered. Our job is not to be idealistic in anything. Our job is to observe a trend and make money. Like I was arguing with a very big CEO, he said that ease of doing business is not there. I said you're right, but in this environment only, last 10 years you've been investing every year 1,000 crore capex. Why are you doing? Now 10 years, in last 10 years of entire or 8 years of chemical cycle, if I took a stance that India is not ease of doing business and I would sit on the sideline, I would miss this whole opportunity. So the point is that we have to observe a trend, we have to benefit from that trend. That is the job of an investor. If I have to have an idealistic debate separately, I can have that also, by the way. And I support, by the way, what government is doing, because we need some amount of protection, some amount of support for Indian to start taking risk. Today in Indian IT sector, in pharma sector, we are globally competitive. We don't need any support from government. And they are all growing up their own, right? We don't need any support. But when US started playing, last 5 years of pharma industry, if you see, US is using a lot of non-tariff barriers to create import alerts and all, right? We all know, correct? Now, that is where Indian government took up matter with them and saying that if that goes on, there's a problem. Post-COVID, that has changed completely. Now, we don't have 483 alerts coming very often. We don't have all those things. Environment has changed, right? So how US was using non-tariff barriers against Indian pharma companies, that has softened now. So all those things will happen. Point I'm trying to tell you that we have to look at the opportunity. As an investor, I observe a trend. My job is to make money. Yes, I have to see that whether it is a short-term trend. Is it a hope trade? Answer is no. I don't want to be in a hope trade. I want to see that, I don't want to be in a trade which is like 3 months, 6 months, 2 years also. I have to be very convinced about the long-term sustainability of trend. Then only I can make money. Short-term trends can change. If it was a short-term sentiment, but we don't think it's a short-term trend, it is a strategic to the need of the country.
Given that markets are at their all-time high, valuations are also obnoxiously high. So on price to earning, if we talk about Nifty, all of us know they're more than 33, absolutely at all-time high. Most investors are definitely desperately either wanting for equity markets to correct, or wanting to find out somebody like you who comes up with some theme which has a sustainable trend, which is a new trend and a sustainable future. So what you're saying is quite interesting, and I'm sure a lot of investors want to explore. However, most of the questions which have come pertain to knowing more about sectors within your portfolio, and maybe some of the stock examples within your portfolio, because at the end of the day, the issue with a thematic portfolio is that a thematic portfolio would have maybe more names of companies within the same sector, and then it would have a sector leader, it would have a good performing company, it would have a bad performing company, and ultimately it may kind of counterbalance, and hence it is required from you to cover with some examples what are the sectors within manufacturing theme, within manufacturing as an industry, and within sectors what are some of the universe of stocks that you are going to ultimately invest in.
Great. I think too many questions in this, but I'll try to take one by one. So one is, as I understand, one is on the market, and second is on the thematic side of the, with some examples of the stock. So I think, see, first of all, on the markets, uh, you know, is there a sort of exuberance in the shorter term? Answer is very much yes. There's no doubt on that, right? And I always tell investors that stay away from participating in exuberance trade, especially when you look at ultra micro caps and small caps and all those things. Things have been kind of going well, and so there's a noise and there's a reality, both kind of things, right? But first of all, I will like to build two perspective around markets, by the way, and then and we are releasing a note tomorrow on that also. To that extent, you are getting a preview, but one of the, see, in India, look at what can happen over next 3-4 years or 5 years. Not apart from the manufacturing thing. I believe 2-3 things have happened. IT as a sector is another big shift which has come in India over next 5-7 years. India's IT sector will grow 10 to 11% as a top line. It means we will have incremental $90 billion of IT revenue every year coming through on an average over next 5 years. 50% of that is salary. Now think, and even if I count offshoring of 30-35%, the domestic salary levels come closer to 40,000 crores a year, 40-50,000 crores a year. So that kind of salary is going to get spent into India. Apart from other operating expenses, IT company will do, right? That money will come and go into hands of employees and disposable income. We talked about manufacturing sector growth. India's GDP doubling. Today, our manufacturing job base is about 5.6 crore jobs. If manufacturing GDP doubles in next 5 years, 7 years, you take whatever period, these jobs also will double. Then there is always a related job. I mean, one job in manufacturing approximately creates 3 jobs. There are various studies saying that in the related sector, informal jobs, right? Thirdly, look at the impact of the drop in the interest rate. It's a very, I think, in my opinion, drop in interest rate is a very, very, or I would say least understood subject. It's a very structural change. We have been waiting for drop in interest rates for long. A drop in interest rate, 150 basis drop we've already seen. More to come. The EMIs go down. The expected project IRRs go down, right? That unleashes more disposable income. That increases the capex cycle. So we are seeing that we believe that we are beginning to see a huge amount of virtuous cycle getting created, where India will go into a reasonably high growth environment over next, supported by these 4-5 factors which I mentioned. And if you look at that in mind, earnings have 2 parts. P ratio has 2 parts: earnings and valuation. Valuation is essentially but a function of interest rates. Now, earnings this year has got compromised, but I can tell you next year after that, earnings have not got compromised. Earnings will remain here. Interest rates coming down. It's very interesting data. 150 basis point drop in the interest rates, by the way, increases the value of valuation of equities by 25%. we have not seen that. We have not sort of factored that in. So I don't feel, given our earning growth, Indian markets are very expensive. Of course, short term it has risen. Some of the There are pockets where there's exuberance. One has to be very careful. So I'm not making a sweeping statement that Indian markets cannot correct. India might correct tomorrow. 5%, 7% correction can come in any. But what you should not miss is the structural opportunity which is there over the next 5, 7 years. Number one. And if you have a conviction of this kind, when the correction comes, you will either sustain and stay through, or you will add more, but you will not get shaken up. If you don't have a conviction, then you will get shaken up, and that's a big point I want to make, right? So I am not worried about the market, levels at all, to be very frank. uh, and I'm not making a point that there cannot be correction. There will be correction, there might be correction. I mean, nobody knows for that in short term. But I see a structural trend, not only for manufacturing, in general for India as a country, or Indian capital markets. Now, coming to the portfolio of the companies, so it's not a thematic. So you should not mix it or misunderstand with the thematic. Like, we are not a pharma fund, we are running. We are not running a IT fund. We are not running a banking fund. We are running a manufacturing-based, opportunity, which cuts across many sectors, which cuts across consumer, pharma, API, capital goods. It can be. I'm telling you, it's like across 10, 12 sectors. So it's not, and it is not also leveraged towards only one vector. It is leveraged on consumer spending. It is leveraged on investment cycle. It is leveraged on export opportunity. So somewhere else, or in other parts of the world, which is happening. So it is not focused on only one variable which can impact. So in that sense, it is reasonably diversified, and it is not say that in 3 years down the line, things will be over. So that is not the object. The kind of companies we will look for, and I can give you some examples. Is, let's say, in chemicals, there is a company which already has 20% plus ROE profile. They are putting up capacities 2.5, or already in the process, by the way. Their total capex announced or undergoing there is about 1,500 crores. Their total gross capex over last 50 years of the existence is 500 crores. Now, as and when the capex goes live, this company will have a superior earnings growth profile, and with a reasonably good amount of surety about customer profile, ability to sell, make margin, and all those things. Right? We've done a lot of work. There's a global MNC which is putting up, they already actually have announced that they will make India as a hub for exports, and they will take their export portion over next 5 years from 10% to 50%. Now, if that, and this company, debt-free company, makes 23, 24% ROE. Now, if this happens, the growth has to come. Customer is already given. I mean, they also already, they have proven. I mean, they just have access. They just need to sell. They just need to manufacture and sell. So, like this, there are many opportunities. There's a company in artificial leather. India imports 90% of the PU in the country. Now, they are the largest company in terms of accreditations. I mean, in terms of market share, they have accreditations with all the large, auto companies, and they also sell in after market, reasonably large share, makes 20% plus ROE, ROCs, debt-free company. Now, those kind of companies we feel are going to benefit the most, and they will be able to capture for them just to put one more line, add another 50 crore capex and get 200 crore top line is easier. The consumer company I talked about, they are getting significant export from opportunity from US on the mattresses. They are growing of their own right in India very well. That growth is continuing. In fact, that growth can only accelerate because of the disposable income aspect, which I talked about just now. So that growth will continue. But on the top of it, if you get export growth coming from US markets, suddenly company will have twin engines of growth. Debt-free company, 20% plus ROE, proven management, high governance. You will be able to identify that. Now, so we are capturing both sides of it, domestic market as well as export market. So now some of these companies will grow very, very fast. Some of the companies will, may not grow that fast. So our idea is to build a portfolio of 14, 15 companies, which can, potentially become 3, 4x from here minimum. And, who knows? I mean, nobody can, frankly speaking, I don't think anybody can crystal ball and say this will become 3x, 4x. All we are saying is that There's a tailwind, and we want to sit on a right ship. I've been an investor in a company called Aarti Industries for since 2013-14, and I identified that company part of this kind of theme only in 2013-14. But if somebody were to ask me that in 2013, did I see that this company will become 50x from here? I mean, it will be utter lie. I mean, nobody knows that how large these companies can become. As long as today, if a kind of IT companies, who could have said that TCS will become a 1,50,000 crore top line company? Nobody in their dream at any point in time, I can tell you. But the fact of the matter is they have become. So all you need to do is that identify it, structural trend, and go and put your money into a very very solid management team and solid business profile. After how far it goes, nobody knows. If the trend turns out to be better, you will get surprised on the upside. If trend turns out to be lesser than, then you might not make as much money. Both are possible. So we are very very convinced about that, this whole structural trend, the tailwind which it is presenting, and these are the structural here to stay in the next 5, 7, 10 years. And we are very confident on the kind of companies profile we will build. We will not take risk on the governance part for sure. We will definitely invest into good quality companies, and that should hopefully achieve our investment objective.
So Indian manufacturing, for it to reach to the next level, and then maybe attract more orders and more capital, we need to work a lot on the quality measures. So India's quality standards are definitely not in line with global quality standards. This is what most questions have been trying to point out. What are your views in this regards?
So I think it's a probably a little outdated notion. I feel. I think Indians have been able to match to the best wherever required, wherever the need has arisen. Okay, look at if we can supply auto components with a precision, casting, precision tooling, across the globe. How were we supplying so far without having this kind? Our pharma industry has grown to $20 billion without having focus on quality. How we have build those sectors. Our IT services again caters to the best in the world, including the likes of Amazon and Google, and they serve best in the world. So without having ability to deliver quality, how they have, yes, in general, does the mindset at the MSME level, SME level, needs to change? Answer is yes. But companies which are organized, large scale, which are addressing to the good customer, quality customer, they are, I can tell you, at par. I can tell you, India is very good in talent. We can match any talent. Only thing is that our mindset of investing into long-term opportunity was missing earlier. It has been changing. It needs to further change. Like today, why we don't have huge amount of investment in new chemical entities, because we need that kind of capital, that kind of mindset to invest into those kind of opportunities. Biocon, by the way, which took this path of long route, was criticized by the investors for good 10 years before they started developing it. For good 10 years, the market cap was 6,000 crores, didn't move at all. And in last 3 years, the market cap has moved to 50,000 crores. So 10x in last 3-4 years, right? So those kind of, now same Biocon is, by the way, biosimilar is a very difficult market. It's been competing with the best in the world, and they have built that, and we think that they will continue to do well. So I think it's a little old notion that Indian quality is poor. Wherever required, Indians have built the quality, and when the need arises, they can compete with the best in the world.
So within your theme of manufacturing, you have discussed various sectoral opportunities, and you have rightly explained it is well diversified in that context, and there are 14 to 15 companies. So rightly focused portfolio. So what is the approach in terms of selecting these stocks? Just explain by taking examples that say within a particular sector, if you were to pick a stock, you will pick this stock versus the other stock. So audience wants to understand whether you're going to follow earnings, or you're going to follow valuation, or you're going to follow the possibility of re-rating of earnings. What is the philosophy in that context?
So I think if you in my presentation I explained that we will look to invest into company with the five characteristics. When the company in any sector, this cuts across the sector. When a company has some capability, some niche capability, some competency which they are already doing. So let us say take example of auto component. The company or the company example which I gave you, that there's a India imports most of the PU, and the company which manufacturing artificial leather. They are largest in India. They work with all the companies across the globe, right? Or a lot of companies across the globe. They could, so they have this static mark that they already have capability, competency, and current market share. Do they have unutilized capacity? They just put up a 50 crore capex, so they will benefit from this capex cycle. They can start immediately addressing to the need of the market. Fourthly, strong balance sheet. It's a debt-free company. Tomorrow, if they have to put another 100 crore capex, they can put it, and they are already considering. Lastly, governance. That they have a good governance profile. There are no governance issues. Good board, good quality. Historical proven track record. So all five ticks are there. Now, if I just invest, and it's not a very richly valued company, it trades at around 12, 13, 14 times P. So, with that kind of profile, we think that, only re-rating can happen of the company. As so, there will be in most of the companies we invest, most I would say you will see combination of re-rating as well as the earnings growth. And another part of the theme investing, by the way, always keep in mind, one of the reason why you make big money is that both re-rating as well as earnings growth come. It is never earnings growth. That's how the themes, as long as it's a structurally sustainable theme. Go back to IT theme. In late mid 90s to late 90s, IT companies got re-rated from 10 times PE to 100 times PE. In last 8 years, look at the chemicals company. Companies like Aarti Industries, SRF, Atul, they used to trade in 2013, 14, 5 time PE. Today they are 40x, 50x from there, not only because of earnings growth. The earnings have grown at 20-25%, plus the PE has got re-rated from 5-6 time PE to 20-25 times PE. So whenever there is a thematic trend builds, you always capture combination of earnings growth as well as the valuation re-rating. So we will look for companies in each of this sector where these have 4 or 5 characteristics. We will not you know we will not buy very expensive companies. We will buy expensive companies only when we see the earnings growth can far outpace, the valuation matrices. Like we find right now in API space, there's a lot of exuberance, and the markets are factoring in 24, 23, 24 times years FY24's earning also. So we will stay away from those companies or those opportunities. We will do only when we are convinced about the growth profile of the company and sustainability. But there is still a lot of money to be made. I think this is the early stage of the development. So we think that we will be able to find both earnings growth and valuation needed.
Right. So this is the second last question, Vikas. Can you please share a couple of names, couple of examples of the companies that are going to be part of your portfolio? Maybe you can take 3 names.
See, Kamal, we are in the process of launching the funds. It's very hard to name them because I think it's effectively that we are not because I don't want to, but it's like, so okay, let me put some of the larger names so that, and I'm not saying that we will necessarily buy. So we can't put the names out, because this is
Absolutely,
in the process.
universe.
So I think, universe of the company, let's say there's a company called Schaeffler and from the MNC space. They are the largest bearing company. They are likely to increase their export proportion. And then auto component, uh, uh, or let's say, I mean, even companies like Aarti Industries will be very much part of this. Whether we will buy or not, I'm not confirming, but something like that will also be part of that. Uh, uh, then I think you can we can technically speaking, I think even companies like Timken can be part of it. Companies like Cummins can be part of it from a large cap space. So there are many names which can be part of this. There are many smaller names with 500,000 to market cap, and that is where I'm little hesitant putting names because they are the smaller ones with a low float and all those things. So I'm kind of bit hesitant on that. But yeah, I mean, many more companies will be there of those kinds.
Right. So why I asked this question, because there have been a lot of manufacturing oriented mutual funds which have come in the past, which today, if one sees, the portfolio comprises of stocks like Reliance Industries, stocks like HLL. Although obviously they are also ITC, they're also part of kind of manufacturing. But what is the kind of differentiation your portfolio would have? That is what I think audience wanted
That,
to understand.
that's a very good question, and I can only tell you one thing. We are very, first of all, we want to say that this is a very small size fund. We are not doing more than 150 crores, and we will, as we said, that we are more mid cap and small cap focused than large cap focused. Thirdly, we will not take companies like HUL and all. I have seen some of the portfolios where people try to, we are not a mutual fund. So, people try to sort of take under theme different stocks. And I saw, a couple of funny names also in the manufacturing portfolio. I saw banking names in, manufacturing portfolios. So all those things happen. We will not do that. So our our focus will be clearly companies which are benefiting from this trend. As I was saying, that either your import substitution or your export opportunity, or low domestic market cap consolidation, combination of all these things. So we will definitely look at it, and we are definitely not looking at companies like what names you mentioned, because ultimately, if what is the end game? End game is not to collect money. End game is to generate return, and generate return out of the conviction. So if I have to buy some of those names, I can buy in my existing fund. Why I have to do a separate scheme for this? The reason why we are doing that separate scheme is because we want to, in a focused way, concentrated way, capture opportunity which is emerging. Rest all we are doing in our main fund, which is capturing. So this is purely focused on this, and it will be predominantly mid and small cap focused. We will not have some of the names which you mentioned. We will not stay away from our theme. Tomorrow, let us say, let me again make a comment. That tomorrow, let's say, for some reason, we believe, let's say, a year down the line, that this we were wrong and the the theme is not for real, or theme is not playing out, or we say that it's not going to happen. We will rather prefer to return money than uh, invest into names which are convoluted, or which are basically staying away from the theme. We will not do that. We will rather return money to the investors.
Right, Vikas, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for joining this session. It has been pleasure talking to you, and thank you everyone for being patient listening to the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamal. Thanks for your time. Thanks, everyone, and for patient listening, and thanks for organizing this.
Pleasure. All the best. Pleasure.